All right, folks, Jay Navarro and the Traders are touring the West Coast in June. That's right, Jay Navarro with bands like Break Anchor, Hellmouth, and the Suicide Machines. They're touring in support of their new album on Bad Time Records, All of Us or None. Tickets are on sale now. Go to traderscod.com to pick them up. June 9th in Portland, Oregon. June 10th, Seattle, Washington. June 12th, Sacramento, California. June 13th, San Francisco, California. June 14th, Anaheim. June 15th, North Hollywood. June 16th, San Diego. And June 17th, Tijuana, Mexico. Omnigon will be playing the Sacramento, San Francisco, Anaheim, and North Hollywood dates. And Stop the Presses will be on every date except for Tijuana. See you there.
The Bodysnatchers were one of just a handful of bands that defined the UK ska revival sound, or two-tone ska as it's now known. The group formed in 1979, but disbanded in 1981 and only released a few singles and some songs on comps. But their legacy remains intact, and their singer, Rhoda Dakar, who we talked to today, continues to be an active musician. She sang vocals on some specials tracks and released a bunch of solo material. She has a great guest vocal spot on the Interrupters song As We Live. Her new album, Version Girl, releases on May 26th, so make sure you go grab a copy.
All right, well, we just watched Dance Craze for the first time a little while back. That was my introduction to the Bodysnatchers, which I think kind of stole the show for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've been trying to get Rhoda on the show for a while now.
Yeah, I'm really excited that she agreed to do the show. Big fan of Bodysnatchers and her work with the specials and her solo stuff too, and including the new album that she's got out.
New album. Got to check it out.
So last year you joined the Interrupters on stage at the Brixton Academy.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I saw you made a video about it, and the Brixton Academy is a venue that you had gone to since you were young.
Yeah, the nearest I got was I was supposed to go on stage at the end when there was a tribute to Ian Dury, except I was in the audience when they announced it, so it took too long for me to get on stage.
That's always the worst.
So that was the nearest I got, but there you go.
You did your verse on As We Live, but you also did a Bodysnatchers song?
Yeah, I did Rocksteady, yeah.
Oh, okay. What was that like to finally get to play the Brixton Academy stage?
It was weird because it's because, as I said, I've never been on the stage before. I stood at the side of the stage, I think, when Robbie Williams was about to go on. We were chatting and he went on for this tribute, the Ian Dury thing. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of got a glimpse, but I never got a real look at what it looks like, because obviously every venue looks very different from on stage than what it does from in the audience. And when I was on stage, I just thought, oh, wow, it's not that big. It's what I thought. I always thought it was massive because obviously I've been going there since I was a kid. But from the stage, it doesn't look that big. And I think part of that is, it's a good design. Mm-hmm. It looked wider than it was deep, which I'm not sure is the case. It may be the case, but obviously it's a cinema, so it's supposed to be wider. Mm-hmm. that kind of makes perfect sense. You don't want to be further away from the screen. You want to be able to see the screen. But yeah, it just and because it's got such a massive rake on it on the floor. The stage not so much, but the auditorium has a real rake on the floor, and so it obviously is the depth of field goes a bit wonky because it's kind of sloping towards you. So, it's kind of tricks of the light, as it were. Physics, basically, is tricks of physics. But the floor has a really, really, like a really big gradient. I don't know if you call it a rake, but in America, but like it has a gradient on it, so it's very steep. The slope is very steep, and I remember going to see Fela Kuti. That's it. I went to see Fela Kuti there, and he played for like 3 hours or something. And I can remember at the end of it, well, after a couple of hours, I had to go and have a sit down on one of the steps because my legs were aching from keeping myself upright because it's got such a strong slope. Keeping yourself upright requires muscles that you don't use very often because I don't spend a lot of my time trying to keep myself upright. It kind of happens naturally.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So consequently, after 2 hours, I was like, I need to go and sit down. My legs were really aching. It was really funny because, it's not like I was a child. I wasn't, not a child. It wasn't like I was a child or I was like an old woman. I was, sort of fairly fit back then. But yeah, I was, that was hard. That was hard. But that's because of the slope. And so that contributes to the depth of field suggestion of it not looking very, like the back of the room is very far.
Yeah, standing on a slope is very tiring on your muscles.
Well, I concur, sir. I don't know how you know that, but I concur. No, I mean, it's a very steep slope, and most, obviously, most halls aren't built like that. But I mean, cinemas are, but that was, really bad. And I think the other thing is, cinemas that are that kind of size tend not to have. They tend to have either seats in them or the kind of configuration is different. But that, because the floor has no seats at all now, all the seats have gone, it really does. Or apparently they're hiding in the basement. So they are still there, some of them anyway. But, so it's a very steep slope from the back of the room to the front.
Yeah, a lot of the places that size have kind of like a tiered situation where you can stand.
Yeah, but it doesn't have that. It is actually just one. It's one slope, and everywhere else I've been like that because obviously they were all built as cinemas. Those kinds of venues, they all have like tiers, but it doesn't have tiers. It's straight down. So
it seems like that would cause a real bad crush right at the front of the stage too, though.
Well, it doesn't seem to.
Not too bad.
I mean, it's not so steep that you actually, if you happen to turn around quickly, that you roll all the way to the bottom to the front of the stage. I don't think it's not that bad. But, if you dropped a sweetie, it might fall all the way to the front. And you might end up having a bit of a tear up trying to get it back because it would be rolling under people's legs. But yeah.
You might not want it back.
You might not. I mean, it depends,
Depends on how desperate you are, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And what sort of packaging it was in. If it was in decent packaging, it wouldn't matter, would it?
Yeah, it might survive. It might be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's not diss the packages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amy interrupted her. She told Kerrang that you were one of her idols.
Oh, that's sweet.
She said that she was hypnotized by your magnetic energy and the way she commands the stage. I've watched her perform in the movie Dance Craze more times than I can count.
Oh, right. Dance Craze. Oh, blimey. Yeah. Dance Craze is all artifice,
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Interrupters, how you ended up on that song? Did they reach out to you, I assume?
You mean, did they send me a message in English? Reach out. What are you like? They reach out to me. What, from the west coast of America? No.
It could have been a phone call.
Yeah, it's a more general, yeah. Or it could be through a manager. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm just making fun. The note.
Oh, please do.
No, but it's the note. Reach out. There are a few phrases that just have me kind of like rolling in the aisles. Reaching out is one of them.
I know. Reaching out's it's very PR speak. Yeah.
I know. It's nonsense. It's like talking about fan engagement. It's like. No, did they reach out? No, he texted me.
How'd they get your number?
From when I gave it to them.
Okay, there you go.
Years ago. That's how we do. I know, mad, eh? Mad. Yeah, he texted me.
Yeah. So pretty personal then.
Well, it was my phone, so yes.
Yeah. I'm just saying there was no management involved, nothing like that.
No, he texted me. Yeah.
That's the way it should
Sorry,
be.
it's hilarious.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. Yeah, he texted me and he said, "We're doing this song. Do you fancy writing a verse?" I went, "Yeah, go on then, send it me, and I'll see what I can come up with." And that's how it was done.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite song on the record.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
it's a very good album.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good album. Yeah, they worked hard on that, but it's one of those kind of the lockdown projects where people have nothing else to do, so they put all their energy into whatever it is they're doing and writing.
Yeah,
I imagine there'll be a few good books come out of lockdown as well.
Sure.
Fairly soon.
Your new record, Version Girl, it kind of started out from lockdown as well, right?
Yeah, it did. It was one of those things where we were in lockdown, and then we were kind of given a bit of leeway where a certain number of people could meet together. I don't know. I mean, I can't even remember now. It seems like another lifetime. But we could go into the studio and record, but we couldn't go to rehearsal studio. Rehearsal studios were shut, but recording studios were open. So consequently, we could record. And what we did was, I just thought, I was just telling someone this a couple of days ago. It's like that thing where you've been on tour. I had been on tour with the Selectors, so for one of the few times in my life, I had a little bit of money in the bank. I mean, not a lot, but I had a little bit of money in the bank, and I just thought, I should put out a single. Like the thing that just eats money. So you do that. Let's make a single. So and when we were able to go into the studio, I thought, well, let's do a happy sad single. So I had an original song that was going to be the A side, the happy song, and then there was Every Day Is Like Sunday. And I thought, because I'd been kind of humming that to myself, because obviously nobody had any idea what day of the week it was, because they were all the same. There was nothing you could do. It was literally like, I don't know what day it is. And the only way you'd find out is if the shops were shut or not. And then you think, oh, it must be a Sunday. So yeah, I've been listening to the Pretenders version of this, and I just thought, oh yeah, it'd be good to do a cover of that. We could do that. So we kind of orchestrated a recording session where I think we reached the maximum number or something. I don't know, but anyway, we managed to record these two tunes. The idea being to put a single out, and I really can't even remember how it came about. But it must have been something to do with, I had done a collab with the Dub Pistols, a song called Stand Together, but we'd recorded it like a couple of years before, but nothing had happened. And then the album was due to come out, and they released the single Stand Together, and that came out literally on Blackout Tuesday. It came out on that day. It was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
So, and you know how like release days, there's nothing you can do about what the release day is. It's like, if it's kind of going to be that day, it's going to be that day. So anyway, so Blackout Tuesday came and Stand Together came out. And by chance, the video that we'd done for Stand Together, some of which had been done sneaky filming in lockdown in a park near my house by my daughter, because that's the only way we could do it. A lot of it was about, it was kind of the old 60s footage of the march, freedom rides and those kind of marches for people, trying to get a vote. And in America, I should point out, because that wasn't the case here. So that came out, the video came out for that, and that tune came out, Stand Together, literally Blackout Tuesday. So, I mean, I was, it was like they were all kind of looking at me going, what are we going to do? We can't say anything. I went, leave it to me, folks. I can say something because it's like, this is my thing. I can deal with this. So, I mean, we did put a bit out, but I think the single didn't do anything like it should have done. It's a really good tune, but it didn't do what it should have done because
timing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one of those terrible things. And, anyway, long story short, or rather I should have said short story long, which is what that was really. The record company who put out that, Stand Together, then said, have you got any other, would you like to do a single? And so I said, well, I might have a little something. And so I sent them the B side because I thought, well, I'm not going to send them the A side that, I thought, well, keep that because we had this other project going called the Low Tech Forum, and the logical progression was the Low Tech album is what we were going to do. So I thought, well, we'll just keep the A side for the album, and the B side we'll give it to the record label. If they want to put it out, they can put it out. Anyway, they decided to put it. They heard it and they said, yes, we want to put it out. And they said, have you got anything else? Do you want to do 2 singles? It's like, oh, okay. And so then you had to have a think. It's like, I genuinely don't even remember what the second recording was, which one we recorded second. But anyway, we recorded another single and they heard that and sort of said, do you fancy doing an album? And we were kind of down the road of doing covers by this time. So it's like, well, we still can't properly get together. So let's just do a few, let's just, do some covers and it'll all come out and then it'll all be done and dusted. And then when we're over, then we can put out the original stuff. We can do the Low Tech album. And I mean, one thing led to another. We got an album, but for the original single, Every Day is Like Sunday, suddenly there was the worldwide vinyl crisis. So you couldn't put out vinyl. And I think the vinyl for that single arrived 10 months after the original single was released.
Yeah,
I mean, literally 10 months. It was insane. So, so everything then got held up, so until the vinyl for that arrived, there was no point in trying to put out something else because everyone would just say, oh, they're just, they're scamming us or whatever. So that already put a 10-month delay. And then, I mean, I don't know, scheduling and whatever. Anyway, so this is something that was we probably finished recording it about 2 years ago, but it's finally going to come out this year. Yeah. It's one of those things that's like, I must remember what's on the album and things like that. I suppose that happens. It happens quite a lot to people, but not very often to me, I have to say. So
we're all kind of in the same boat. I've heard of friends' bands having wait times as long as 18 months.
Yeah,
for a record to get pressed. And then by that point, members of the band have even changed and they don't even play those songs anymore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of a bit of a mad one. It's like, it's all over the place. But anyway, here we are. It's going to come out. It's recorded, it's pressed. There's copies. I've seen them, I've touched them. I've opened them. So it's not just, it's not just empty sleeves. I know that there's records in there because I've seen the records. I've opened 2 of them and seen the records, so I know there are real records there. But yeah, I mean, it's a funny old business.
Mm-hmm. Was there much thought process to the songs you chose, or were they just sort of songs that you liked and felt like would work?
Was there much thought process? Well, yes.
Well, what was that process, though?
It was me thinking. What do you mean? Yeah, it's me thinking. That's what thought process is. It's me thinking, how can we do, what song shall we do and what might work? That's exactly what I thought. And I would have those thoughts and conversations in concert with Lenny Bignell, who was the producer. And there were ideas, he might come up with something and I'd be going, I don't know. And I'd come up with something and he'd go, oh, I don't know. And, so there were there's at least one or two things that never got finished because they just didn't seem like they were working. Or or maybe I couldn't, I'm trying to think of the word, I couldn't really connect with the vocal. So, because there are songs that you like, but if you can't connect with the vocal, then you're just going to do a terrible job. So there seems little point in.
What were those songs that you didn't feel like worked ultimately?
You don't need to know that.
Oh, come on.
No, why?
Those are the fun bits to know.
What is it about geezers and this kind of eternal thing about having to have all the details?
Oh, I love it.
You don't need to look behind the curtain.
Okay, fine.
It's magic. It's nothing to do with you. It's a piece of magic. Songs that I couldn't sing. Yeah,
You really want to let us know what those ones are, right?
I so don't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the 70s when you were, I know you were interested in glam rock, you're interested in punk rock. I saw that you saw Iggy Pop in the mid-70s, and it was a pretty amazing experience.
I don't think that's what I said. I think what I said was I went to see him because I didn't think he was long for this world.
Yes, yeah, that's right, yeah.
That's not quite the same, is it, really?
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I said. Same reason I went to see Lou Reed. I mean, I saw Lou Reed probably a couple of years earlier, but I just thought, well, all is over. We better see it. We might not get another chance. I mean, it was, that was how you thought back then. It just seemed like a common sense approach. This may be our last opportunity. So yeah, that's why I went to see him. I don't remember the experience at all. I just remember thinking, I mean, it was what you expect of Iggy. It was like he threw himself on the floor and he writhed and he took his shirt off. It was an Iggy Pop show. I don't remember it. I honestly don't remember any more of it. More of it than that. I mean, I've seen him since, and he's very good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that settled his stomach. Oh, the relief in the room when he heard that I actually thought it was good. I mean, no, I thought it was good, but yeah, I didn't say it was an experience. That's exactly what I actually said was I didn't think it was long for this world. Yeah, because those were all the indications.
In Defense of Ska, we'll be right back.
This is the Voice of America, Washington, D.C., signing on.
All they have is just
the station with the best in your face, all over the place.
She looks like every other I think the not, you trick ass.
The Subverted Radio Show, anywhere you get your podcast.
Yeah, I read the book Please Kill Me like a while back. And you read that book and you feel like amazed how many of those people survived not only the 70s but the 80s and 90s.
Well, I've never heard of the book or indeed read it, so I don't I mean, I can guess to what you allude.
It's an oral history of this era, the sort of the foundation of punk.
All right, okay. Well, it's a story of junkies, then, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. What a shocker!
Yeah.
And you look and you think, wow, look at them. Look at that healthy individual. That's a lifestyle I'll definitely hanker after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's it was very sad. There were some people who had tragic cases, and you just really wished you could have saved them, but there's nothing you can do if some people are bent on a lifestyle, and you just have to just kind of just go, well, And but I mean, there are people who survived who I never thought would survive. Iggy Pop, obviously, and I mean, I don't know. Lou Reed survived that era, but yeah, I mean, there were people I knew back then who I'm surprised are still around now. Well, not surprised. I'm delighted are still around now. It's not the surprise bit. It's the delight. Really, is the good thing. And yeah, a lot of them were around the kind of punk thing. But yeah, it's amazing. And as I remarked to someone the other day, all 4 original members of the Sex Pistols are still with us. I mean, that was never written on the cards, was it? Amazing. I'm delighted.
Mm-hmm.
So you, Paul Cook and Steve Jones were close. You often refer to yourself as their little sister.
Yeah. I think that's kind of how I was perceived, yeah.
How did you meet them?
Well, let's see. It all started back in November 1973. I was stood outside Roxy Music playing at the Rainbow in London, Finsbury Park. And me and my mate, was I with Jenny Bishop? I don't know. But my mate Benny Bish, about whom I've written a song, I don't know if you've ever heard it, From Benny Bish to Toothless Anne. Anne sadly didn't make it. But yeah, the kids used to try and bunk. We call it bunking, but you probably would say sneaking.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was a whole tradition of going to gigs and seeing if you could sneak in round the back or something like that. And we went there and met up with a whole load of other kids, all trying to do the same thing but not able to. And I mean, some of those people I still know to this very day. Interestingly, Paul and Steve did manage to bunk into that gig. I remember chatting one time. I said, "Oh yeah, we went to that. Yeah, we snuck in round the back." It's like, no, you didn't. But they got in anyway. We didn't get in. But yeah, they were a bit older and just had a bit more guile, shall we say? We were 14. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
bless us, like we were kids. We didn't know how you really snuck into a gig anyway. So yeah, it was a big group, and among those people was Jill Price, who later she went out with Paul Weller, but she lived in Bromley, so she knew all these people from Bromley, like Susie Sue, Steve Severin, whatever. I mean, all the kind of the people who became the Bromley contingent. And so she said to us, we all used to hang out. She said, "Oh, look, there's this really good club, where a lot of people I know are going. We should go." So we all went to this club called Louise's, and that's in Soho. Because I mean, it was a lesbian club, and it was one of the few places where people who dressed like us could go and be safe, because everybody was an outsider there. So we were safe, because you couldn't always go in places. This was probably just before the time that punks were really vilified, but we were pretty much vilified just for being odd and dressing weirdly and whatever. So anyway, we started going to Louise's, and that's where I met the Pistols anyway. So that's where they used to hang out down there, but so did so many other people. I mean, obviously Sue, Steve, Billy Idol, who else was there? A guy called Berlin, who I think wrote a book. Trying to think who else. Oh yeah, famous kind of club people like Philip Salon. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's like there's a whole list of people, it was a place to be, put it that way. So, and I think, Jordan and Vivian and Malcolm from, everyone was in and out of there at some point anyway. So that's where I first met Paul and Steve, and my mates started going out with Paul. And so, I'd just be like the mate, because we were so young.
Mm-hmm.
I would be the mate. When they started to make a bit of money and they bought a flat, I used to just go around there to be the third wheel sort of thing or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it was nice. I used to wake up in the morning, stay there on a Saturday night, and I would sleep on the sofa and wake up in the morning, and they had this really good collection of skinhead reggae. So I used to DJ that in the morning when I woke up. So it's kind of where I first curated a playlist. But yeah, they had all the records that I couldn't afford at the time. So
the The Harder They Come soundtrack was one that they had that you really liked?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd seen the film, but I didn't have the album. So it was great to be able to play it and get to know it, you know.
So, okay, fast forward a few years. Bodysnatchers forms in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
You're the final piece to this puzzle.
I am.
Yeah. So Shane MacGowan, he's from Pogues now, but back then he was in a band called the Nips.
Yeah.
He introduced you to Nikki Summers, the bassist, and that's how you ended up joining?
Yeah.
And you came to the rehearsal and sang "Do the Rocksteady," and you were in.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, basically.
Had they auditioned anybody else before you, or was anybody else filling in on vocals?
No idea. Didn't bother asking. Didn't care.
Sure.
I read some article, and sounds like many names were considered.
Oh my lord! Yeah. Yeah.
Bodysnatchers wasn't necessarily one that you loved.
Yeah, it's the one we all hated the least. That is exactly right. But the film there'd been the remake, the film, with, I believe, Donald Sutherland, and a remake had come out, so that was why that got mentioned, I suppose.
One name considered was Pussy Galore.
Yeah. Which, you know, now nothing, but then impossible.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. You laugh. It would have been awful.
It would have.
It's not a good name.
That's why I laugh, because it's just such an obviously not right name.
Well, it was perfectly good for a James Bond movie.
Sure. At the early rehearsals, I also read you say that you guys weren't good yet, but you were unbelievably confident.
Yeah. Confident beyond our abilities.
I definitely remember when I was young playing music, feeling that way too. Just anything I did was amazing. And, you know, you listen back to recordings, you're like, oh, okay, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, this is just after punk, remember? So I'd seen some really terrible bands by this time. People who really couldn't play or were just awful and whatever. So we weren't as bad as the worst of them, and we weren't as good as the best of them. So the fact that we could get away with it, I think, is what made me think, yeah, we can do this. We can get away with this.
On your second show, you're opening for the Nips, and so there's like Jerry Dammers. There's I think Pauline Black. There's other like two-tone people are there.
Yeah, it was Juliet Wills, who was the selectors manager at the time, but she's now Billy Bragg's manager. Yeah, so she was there too.
Were they all kind of checking you guys out, or were they just there?
No, they come to see us. They specifically come to see us, because if they'd just been there by accident, they probably would have missed the support band.
Sure, yeah.
As I often do. I mean, you know, if you go to see a band, you go see that band. You don't necessarily come to go see the support band.
Was that so Jerry, did he sign you after, or offer you a deal after that gig?
Two Tone offered us a deal. I mean, not straight away, but Two Tone offered us a deal, yeah. But I mean, there was a proviso. We had to go on the tour, and if we didn't want to go on the tour, then we couldn't sign for them. But they weren't the only people offering us a deal at the time.
Who else was offering you deals at that time?
Oh, we talked to people from at least 2 other labels who were offering us album deals, which probably would have been a better move, you know, in retrospect. But then for the logical progression of one's career, it would have been a better move. But on the B side to that is we wouldn't have had the experience of playing on that tour, and we wouldn't have been on Dance Craze. So, I mean, not that really did anything for us at the time, but I think it definitely gave us a ready-made audience.
Yeah. I mean, at the time when Two Tone offered you a deal, there was no way to know that, you know, by the time you did the 2 singles, that the band would be you know, that ska would not really be as popular as it was when you started, and that you would have problems within the band, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean,
well, yeah, but you see, we were the only people who had been required to do a 2 single deal. So everyone else did 1 single, which would have been a hit, and then they got to sign with someone else. They made us do 2 singles, and that was it. Just kind of, if we'd only had to do 1, we then could have gone on to sign with someone else. But because we were required to do a second single, it made it really difficult. And because it didn't do as well, there was nobody there at the end to say, "Oh, do you want to sign for an album?" So it kind of really stymied our possibilities by insisting that we did 2 singles.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a good move for us at all in the end.
Yeah, I could see that. So when you played that second show that we talked about, it was all covers, but the Boiler was the one original.
Yeah, I don't remember if we'd had another original song by the second show, but for the first show, we certainly only had one original song, which was The Boiler.
So my understanding is that the band came up with a riff and was like, kind of, asked you to come up with vocals, and because you had like a background in theater, you approached it more like a scene than like singing a verse chorus, if you will.
Yeah, they didn't ask me to come up with something. They were just kind of playing this riff, and I just started telling a story, basically. So like an improv over it, and that's what it led to.
Yeah. Did it come out pretty much how we know it now, or was it different?
It was different every time because it was improvised. The lyrics weren't written down, so it was different every time at that point. Yeah, it was an improvisation, and I would sort of talk around the story till I got to the point I wanted to, and they would just kind of riff on this background until it got to a certain point, and then they would up the pace or up the volume, and then another riff like would come in and stuff like that. So they would kind of follow me, basically. Well, because I didn't know where it was going, so they kind of had to.
Yeah.
I see. Now, was there, I don't know if this was true, but I did read somewhere that you guys wanted to release it as a single, but Chrysalis said, we don't think so.
That's absolutely the wrong way around. I think Jerry wanted to release it as a single, and the band said no.
Oh, okay. The band was like, this is not a single.
Yeah, they didn't want to do it.
I see. Well, how did you feel about it?
I have no memory of how I felt about it, if I'm honest.
Sure.
There were more important things to retain at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm afraid, that got dumped, what I thought about it at the time. I never thought it was going to be a single.
I see.
I mean, it's pretty intense for a single, even by today's standards.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You're kind of at the point where you're breaking barriers back then anyway. I mean, the thing is, we were 7 women in a band. Anytime we did anything, we would go to meetings en masse. We would turn up at places en masse. So everything was kind of different anyway. There were other all-female bands, but they were they were kind of much more. I mean, we were pop. We were kind of mainstream pop band. We weren't really, and I don't mean in any pejorative sense. I mean that we were a band that, teenage magazines talked about and stuff like that. We were a pop band. Two Tone was pop at that point. It was what was happening all over the country. So we were a pop band. So it probably wouldn't have been the right thing for a pop band to release. But there again, we released a single at the point where the shine was going off the whole movement. And it probably could have been saved, that's not really a good word, but like, I'm sure in marketing terms, things could have been handled better, but they weren't. And it is what it is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so kind of back to your point about being pop, Two Tone being pop. Punk came before, and punk was we think of punk's legacy, but punk wasn't really pop at that point, right? Like, not the way Two Tone became pop.
No, exactly. It wasn't at all. I mean, it was always much less acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
There were kind of new punk stroke new wave bands who did become pop, but that was due to the fact that of the kinds of tunes they wrote, not the content of the tune, but maybe the musical arc. So I'm thinking of like bands like the Undertones or the Buzzcocks. I mean, they became, they appeared on Top of the Pops and things like that, but they wrote power pop, incredible power pop tunes. So, but they were also part of their legacy and where they'd started was punk. I mean, the Jam was around at the same time, and they were on Top of the Pops. I mean, they weren't a punk band, but they'd started at the same time, or at least they had become popular at the same time.
You could say punk adjacent, right?
Well, if you're American, you could, yeah. Nobody in the UK would ever say that.
Right. Okay.
No. So, yeah, as it's for you, yes, you could say that.
Sure.
Yeah. You could reach out and say punk adjacent. Oh, my word.
You got me.
The death of a language. Anyway, go on.
But when you saw ska, two-tone ska start to blow up with like specials with gangsters and all this, it emerged as pop music. Was that your perspective?
Well, I mean, pop music is really only short for popular music. So what is really popular? What sells a lot? What is in the charts? That's what pop music is. So did it get in the charts? Yes. Did it sell a lot? Yes. So yeah, it's pop music, so by definition, it is pop. I mean, to a certain extent, Susie and the Banshees became pop because I can certainly remember seeing Sue at Top of the Pops same day we were, same time we were there. So, yeah, I mean, it's whatever becomes popular. Oh, there you go, bit of Wicked. Yes, there we go. Alluding to the Broadway musical. There's something I could not talk for hours about. But my daughter, on the other hand, whoa, and especially that particular show. But yeah, I mean, pop music is popular music. So does it sell a lot? Is it on the telly? Is it on the radio? Yeah, so it's pop. What else it is?
It was more palatable, or maybe, I mean, two-tone and these bands had political messages and whatnot, but punk, I think, like the establishment, if you will, the people, there was a rejection of that by a lot of people. Did ska, these bands come out, did it feel a little bit more, a little easier on mainstream England?
Well, you'd probably have to ask mainstream England, but I mean, I'm not, I'm neither of those things. But I think punk have been set up as bad boys. That was they were the bad boys, and the classic Bill Grundy thing is like they were set up as bad boys, and so that then reflected on everything else.
I see.
There was no seminal, there was no Bill Grundy moment for two-tone, and I think the political message was snuck in under the wire. I don't think people really realised. And at the point where we're singing "Free Nelson Mandela," most people didn't know who he was. There were Tories who were frothing at the mouth. Tories are Republicans to you, who were frothing at the mouth saying, "But he's a terrorist," But nobody ever, there was no, you couldn't really push back on it because it had been a hit and it was like, yeah, Free Nelson Mandela, yeah. And once it's become something that people have sung along to, it's very difficult to push back on it. So it's almost like you learn the lessons of punk and you hide your messages, I don't know, you hide your messages under the sweet corn or under the mash or something else, which is something that people do for children. They hide the food that they want them to eat in something that they will eat. So
Yeah.
it was almost done like that, because so many bands were like putting out, there was sort of politics in the music, and people didn't really they were singing along to it without realizing what it was exactly.
That's the best way to get somebody on your side.
Well, it's the best way to start to get them on your side. You have to, in order to keep them on side, they then have to understand and learn the lessons of the message. But if they don't, there's no point in them missing the point forever, because nothing will change.
Yeah. I think though that maybe though, like if your audience is young and hasn't made up their mind, you have like a lot more in towards bringing them in with the music and then teaching the politics.
Oh, you sound like an indoctrinator, man. I was not doing anything of the sort. I was a young person saying what I thought, but saying it with a great tune. And so, I don't think it could be argued with in that sense. I mean, and also the politics of what we looked like as well. So
Sure.
you have bands that are made up of black people and white people, and there are bands that are all women, and some of those women are even black. I mean, all of that makes a massive political statement before you even say word one.
I say this more as like I don't say this as an indoctrinator, but
no, that's what it sounded like though.
I was a kid who grew up in a religious right-wing family who kind of learned more about the world through punk and ska. So I say more from that point of view.
Oh my Lord! So did you get deprogrammed then? Or was it that bad, or was it?
I am deprogrammed, if that's what you're asking. And music played a point. Yeah.
Well, this is cool, but I went to religious schools. So I went to 2 religious schools. All my schooling was in religious schools. But when I say a religious school in the UK, it's totally unlike what you're thinking. I mean, a religious school here is, and I didn't go to Catholic school, it was Protestant. And so I sang hymns every day at school and heard, sort of tracts from the Bible every day. But it turned me into a socialist. Well, there's a dirty word for you. Turn me into a socialist, because for me, if you have honestly understood, I mean, I should also point out, I was always an atheist and I remain an atheist. So it never actually turned me, but the message was a message of socialism. So how anyone can claim to be a fundamentalist Christian and not understand that is the inevitable end point of that argument is socialism, is like, well, were you reading the same bit as me? You can't have been, you can't have been reading what I was reading, because that, and everyone I know, all the people I went to school with, all ended up being socialist because of this this religious not indoctrination, but we listen to it every day. And the bit that I suppose you can always, the thing about that is you can always pick and choose what you tell people, but it was all about love thy neighbor as thyself. And I can't understand how anyone can come to any other conclusion after reading that. And I'm sorry that went down a very, very sensible and serious.
I definitely understand, and I could see that point of view of like why if you read the Bible and if you listen to these teachings, it is like socialism and stuff like that. But the way it was filtered in where I grew up was absolutely not that, and that's the way a lot of religious people, particularly here in the U.S., are just, they take it into a completely different direction, and it's a different message, and not a good one.
Well, it's not the Jesus message.
It's not the Jesus message.
It's not the Jesus message. And I think that's the point, isn't it? The point is it's not the Jesus message. And honestly, if that's what they're making it up, basically. They're making it up. It's like the days when people couldn't read, so they would believe what the priest told them.
Yep.
Anyway, and on to something lighter and more palatable.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I want to talk about the song "Ruder Than You" because you guys wrote it with Gaz Mayall, right?
Well, me and Gaz wrote it.
Oh, you and Gaz wrote it.
It was
Okay.
just me and Gaz, yeah.
So tell people who Gaz is first.
Gaz is John Mayall's son. So John Mayall of the Blues Breakers or whatever, the blues artist, white English blues artist, I should point out. Gaz is his son.
Yeah, John. He like predates a lot of the '60s British invasion blues influenced acts.
Yeah.
So he's those acts were influenced by American blues artists, but also John was an influential element too, and a lot of those musicians started in his band as well.
Okay, well, I don't know about that. I'll be honest.
Okay.
Hands up. I don't know. I don't know about that.
But who cares about John? Let's talk
No.
about Gaz.
I just meant not my area of expertise, sir. You
Sure.
know, I can bore you about how I think Jesus leads you to socialism, but John Mayall, no idea. Because I never met him either. That's the thing. I never met him. I knew a lot of Gaz's. I met his siblings and his mum. I never met his dad. So
I actually know a fair amount about John only because I wrote for weekly newspapers for a long time, and he came through town all the time. So I'd always have to write a blurb about him. So I end up like learning all this history about John Mayall.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so there you go.
That's all good. Nice. Look, if you learn something, learning something useful is never a bad thing. Increasing your knowledge is never a bad thing. It only makes you a bigger person. But I do say knowledge and not propaganda.
Yeah.
Anyway. And back in the room.
So Gaz, what was he had a shop, right? This kind of predates Two Tone.
Yeah, okay. So there was this place called Kensington Market, which was, I'd no idea really how it came about, but basically there was it was like a row of shops in Kensington High Street. It was in the days when Kensington High Street was the centre of the shopping universe for young people. And there was Bieber there, which is where I saw, they had like this venue at the very top called Rainbow Room where I'd seen the New York Dolls. And then a bit along from there was this place called Kensington Market, which was basically this kind of falling down set of interconnecting shops. And it was on about 3 floors, but it was incredible. It was like a rabbit's warren in there. And people rented little corners and had their own shops. And my friends, one of my friends who I'd met outside the Rainbow back in 1973 had started a shop. He had his own stall in there. And and I think maybe a couple of months after he opened his, then Gaz opened his one, which was literally just round the corner. And, he's a big character, so we'd chat. And Gaz would have his thing, because Gaz... he lived right near Hyde Park. What's Hyde Park? Yeah, he lived right near Hyde Park. And so we'd sometimes, and he had a basement. And then, we were of the age where most of us we didn't have an entrance to our own bit of the world. We had to go through our parents' house, and he lived in the basement of his parents' house. So, and you could go straight in, and he had his own loo and a little bit kind of kitchenette thing. And so he had his own gaff, as it were, his own place. So people used to go there and hang out, and he had like this massive record collection, which was partly his dad's, I imagine, but also he was kind of obsessive about buying records. So you go down there and he'd like play you music. He'd play music. Have you heard this? Have you heard this? And had this encyclopedic knowledge. And also he had a piano in there, So people, you kind of hang out at his place and listen to music. And, if you were really lucky, he'd make you a mixtape, which was a big deal back then, So you had like a sort of a set of tunes that you'd never heard of before and probably never would again since, but, afterwards. But yeah, so Gaz used to do that. So I mean, he's, you know, why did we end up? He said to me, "You need an anthem," and so I was round his place and we wrote one. That's all.
You need an anthem.
That's what he said. You need an anthem. Yeah, said you need an anthem. The wise words of Gaz Mail. You need an anthem. Let's write one. So we did.
Just like that. Easy.
Yeah. So that's what we did, and I took it to the band. Well, I think we took it to band. He must have had to play it as well, because it would have been, you know, I didn't play it, he played it. But yeah, that's what happened. We wrote it and took it to the band.
So, okay, I want to talk about the two-tone tour that we talked about earlier. That was the summer of '80 with Specials and Go-Go's and Bodysnatchers.
That was called the Seaside Tour.
Oh,
that
okay.
wasn't. Yeah, the two-tone tour had been in '79. The next tour in March '80 was with the Selector and Holly and the Italians originally, and us, which was actually a Selector's tour. I mean, it's known as the second two-tone tour, but it wasn't really.
Oh, okay.
And then in the summer, there was the Seaside Tour, which was the Specials, the Bodysnatchers, and the Go-Go's.
So now you're touring and you're playing constantly. This is, I think I've seen you say that it was the two-tone tour, so the Selector tour, where you really started to feel like the band was getting their chops from relentless touring.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, that's how it's the 10,000 hours, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, until you've done it, you aren't any good. And we kind of, I think in that year that we were together, we played about 200 shows. It was a ridiculous number of shows.
Wow.
So we did, you know, you do get good if you play enough. And, you know, and so we did.
Now on the Selector tour, here's a little fun little story I read. Some journalists were asking you questions. The band didn't like their questions, so they pulled out water soakers and soaked them.
Water pistols. Water soakers are a bit later in history. Water pistols, the small version, are what we had. Yeah, it was, I can't remember, it was Record Mill or something. Yeah, in fact, I think there is a cover of a record. There's a cover of a music magazine with us with water pistols to our heads, and those were the very water pistols.
The infamous water pistols. Yeah,
they are the very water pistols. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's boring being on tour. You got to do something for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Let's talk about Dance Craze a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When was the footage shot? Do you know where and when?
No.
Was it on any of these tours?
Yes, I mean, surely you can get this from the press sheet. Do you have to ask me? I don't know.
She's going to squirt you with those water guns.
I'm really not, because okay. I'm in London and you're not.
Hey, they have those super soakers now though. You might be able to reach from them.
No, it's physics. Physics, love. Physics. I can't actually reach you with a water pistol from here.
True.
Yeah. Okay. God, I'm so pleased. Mr. Khan, thank you for your physics classes. I wouldn't be able to explain it otherwise. No, I don't know when it was. I mean, all that information must be available. It was all filmed in 1980, as far as I know.
Yeah,
that's all I can tell you. I've no idea what gigs. I don't remember. It wasn't one gig; it was loads. So I've no idea.
Was there more films than what we see? Like, were there the cameramen around a lot?
Probably.
Do you remember the camera people getting in your way when you were on stage?
Oh, good Lord, no, man. I don't remember. No. It was 43 years ago. Why would I remember what that was like?
I don't know. Some of those things stick out. Sometimes they end up unplugging something, stepping on the pedal or something.
Okay. Well, I think you need to have this conversation with someone else.
Oh,
I can't remember. I can't remember. No, you don't need to apologise. I'm just saying I don't remember.
Sure.
I have no memory whatsoever of being filmed at those. I saw the film the other day for the first time, and I have no memory of it. It was like, oh, blimey, that doesn't sound as bad as I thought it would. So that was literally the only thing I thought when I came out of it. It was like, oh, that screen's a bit close, and blimey, I don't remember it sounding that good, is literally all I thought when I having watched it.
Yeah, I just watched it for the first time recently, and the thing I was the most taken with was how packed in the audience was. Like, and you can't really see them a ton because the footage is so dark, but then whenever the stage lights hit them, you can really see, like, it's just like a sea of bodies.
Well, yeah, because they didn't have things like crash barriers and stuff back then. So the band the audience were right up to the stage and could get on stage quite easily, quite often. Right. So, yeah, I mean, everyone would be, people's faces would be right under yours. There was no distance. And if there was security, it would have been security you brought with you. So there wasn't venue security, things like that.
No venue security. Okay.
No. There was nobody to, that whole notion is sort of fairly recent. I mean, in America, I'm trying to think. I don't remember. What did I do in America? In America, I climbed on stage from the audience. I know I did. Because when I went there, I went there with the specials in 81, and I know because I often did it, is I would be in the audience and they would call me and I would get on stage from the audience. So I know it was the same in America because I did the same thing. But yeah, I mean, it's, there wasn't the security. So, I mean, heaven forfend that anything really terrible would happen. It's almost just by accident. It didn't. It wasn't by design, definitely. Anything could have happened. I remember being on stage and looking down, especially on that Seaside tour, and you play at the end of a pier. I remember looking down through a hole in the stage and I could see the sea.
It's a little unnerving.
Well, you just think, well, it's held up all this time. I know, as long as I get off all right, I think we'll be okay. But yeah.
As long as it doesn't fall through during your set.
Well, I mean, the Go-Go's had already been on by this time. So when we came on, I thought, well, the Go-Go's survived it, so we probably can. It's only the specials and the 200 people they invite on stage with them that have got to survive the next bit. And stages did break when they, there would be accidents where stages broke and people didn't, I don't know, nobody seemed to mind. Now it'd be lawsuits and, and the MPs up in arms. But back then, nobody particularly bothered. Especially it's young people. It's young people going to see a band. They aren't people that anybody cared about.
Your first time seeing Dance Craze, was that at the IMAX Waterloo event?
Yeah.
This was like, I guess because it's just gotten remastered and all that and reissued.
Yeah.
You participated in the event too, the Q&A?
Eventually, yes. That's because I wasn't supposed to, but I just complained to the guy who was running it. He happened to be sitting a couple of seats away from me while we were watching it, and I just ribbed him about not asking me to come and join in. So eventually, he went and got me a chair to join in. I suppose, hoping that I wouldn't ask difficult questions. So it's probably easier to have me on the panel than it is to have me in the audience.
What was that event like? Everybody reminiscing about Dance Craze and all this? I
suppose so. I mean, it's bizarre. It's a bizarre. Look, what can I say? I feel as it doesn't feel like it's anything to do with me. It's very weird. I mean, and I know Dance Craze was really important for lots of people, so I don't want to decry it in any way, but it's not something, I don't know. For me, that kind of mod ethos of onwards and upwards is what's important. You can look back at what was and enjoy it and appreciate it for what it was, but actually my gaze is always to the horizon. It's not to, what went before.
Dance Craze seemed to have like in a way it had more importance in the US because we didn't, or kids in the 80s didn't get to see most of the bands.
Yeah.
So they got to see Dance Craze instead.
Yeah, I mean, and it had its own culture, which is nothing to do with me. It happened, it was because of us but it didn't include us. It wasn't about us, really. And it wasn't for us. And that's great. You know, it was for those people to make of it what they did. It wasn't for us. So it was, you know, I'm kind of like, it's almost like, imagine being the person who the Venus de Milo is based on, you know, and like, it's an iconic piece of art, but nothing to do with the person who kind of who was the original idea for it. Do you see what I mean? So that's my relationship. It's like I'm like the person who sat for the Venus de Milo. Well, I don't know if you really sit for a sculpture; it'd be a bit of a long job. But do you see what I mean? It's like that's the relationship. I was there and I was filmed. And maybe, and I'm not saying this is how everyone else feels. It's just how I feel. It's like, it doesn't feel like it's anything to do with me. It happened. I was there, but I didn't make it happen. Somebody else made it happen. Those were the people who made the film. And really, their take is the most important one. And also people in the audience, people who love the film. But I'm not either of those people. Do you see what I mean? I feel very distanced from it.
And Bodysnatchers had broken up, too, by the time the film was even released.
Precisely.
I think Specials had broken up, too. I mean, it was...
No, they hadn't.
Oh, okay.
No, because at the point that I think that Dance Craze came out, I was either on tour, we're going on tour with the Specials. So, yeah, Specials broke up after Dance Craze.
Oh, okay.
As far as I remember, because I remember going to the premiere in London, and I'm sure it was before. Anyway, well, it might not be. You might be right. You know, my memory never was much good. It's even worse now.
I'm not sure, because I remember Roddy Radiation told me that he didn't go to the premiere because I think that's when everything blew up at the premiere.
Oh, possibly. Who knows?
It was a very long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows?
But ska wasn't really the flavor of the month when it released in England as well.
The lick is what Don Letts would describe it as.
The lick.
Yeah, it wasn't really the lick. I love it. It's a great description. It's a great short description. Yeah, it wasn't really the lick. It wasn't. You know, it kind of gone off the boil, and people had turned their heads to the next thing, which by that time was a kind of, you know, I don't know. It was kind of Blitz kids and sort of dressing up and all of that, which was also cool. You know, I went along to a few of those. Good, interesting.
The song you sang with Specials, the song that you sang with Terry, the I Can't Stand It. I really like that song. I love the vocal interplay between the two of you. It's a nice sound because it really sounds like two equal people singing together and you know, kind of going back and forth and stuff.
Well, that's what it is, because I mean, it's I think it was probably too low for Terry. I don't, you know, because it wasn't. I mean, as with a lot of things, if people who write, because Jerry wrote it, but Jerry can't really sing, so he didn't really understand that whole thing about people having a vocal range and what works for a vocal range. So, yeah, that was kind of weird, because we sang it in unison, and I don't think it was particularly right for either of us. So it's kind of, you're both struggling to make it work.
Nobody thought to just change the key?
Oh, I don't think the notion of just changing the key. Well, firstly, it was all, the backing track was recorded.
Gotcha.
So, and there was no way of doing that back then, and also it never would have occurred to Jerry to write a song in the right key for anybody. Well, because if you can't sing, it doesn't occur to you that actually people can't sing. You know, no, they can't sing this because it's not in their key. I mean, you know, it's the bane of any vocalist's life. No, this isn't the right key for me. Oh, really? Can't you just? It's like, no. This isn't just like putting it, you know, you can't just put a capo on a vocal.
Yep.
Like, it's a physical thing. If it physically doesn't fit, there's nothing I can do about that. And it's not about not trying. It just doesn't fit.
Sure. We all have our limitation.
That's not really, that's not best description, is it? What it is physically people can do things within a certain range.
Yeah.
And it's not a limitation. It's just how your body is made, and yes, it is a limitation, but that's really not the point I was trying to extract from that, I have to say. But anyway, there we go. It is what it is.
Sure. After this, we get into specials breaking up, essentially, and Jerry does specials, aka, or special, aka.
Okay, so how long are we going to be here then? Oh my God.
I know this was not a great time for you. The only part of the experience that you would say was a positive one was when you sang with Elvis Costello in Nelson Mandela.
Did I say that?
Yes, you said, because it said it was a 2-year process of being in basically this uncomfortable basement studio, and spending much of the time sitting around, I guess, as Jerry was, doing what Jerry does, and not a fun experience. But that was definitely a highlight for you, was getting to meet Elvis Costello.
Yeah, that's not really the same as singing with him. So yeah, he produced the single because the record company had insisted that there was somebody to say no, and they deemed that he would be the person most able at this point to say no to Jerry. And yeah, I mean, it was a much better experience in that it was shorter for a start, and he was in charge and because he had a certain amount of gravitas, he could say, no, that was really good, we don't need to do that another 5 times. That one time was okay, but I wouldn't say that it was enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't enjoyable. I mean, it wasn't enjoyable. It was just, because the thing is, it's like the song had been written as a band, and I'd contributed a verse or whatever, and then by the time it was in the studio, it was all something else. It wasn't the band again. And I was kind of pushed out onto the edge, and I don't know. It was all. I mean, Special OK was no fun at all. So not anything I would ever miss or want to do again.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a product of Jerry like redoing everything over and over and over again. This 2-year period.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't fun at all.
No, there's nothing fun about that.
No.
Yeah. You guys re-recorded or officially recorded The Boiler.
Yeah, but that was before. That was like a year before. We recorded that in January 1981.
Oh, okay.
And Jerry fiddled with it for a year before it came out.
I see.
So, that was recorded. Yeah, it was recorded not long after the Bodysnatchers split. So, it was Rhoda and the Special OK, or with the Special OK or something, but it wasn't, it was not part of that project, because that project didn't start for about another, in fact, I'm not sure how long. I didn't join the project for about another 7 or 8 months.
But the song was released as a single?
Yeah.
And no radio stations played it, but it still charted.
That's not true. It was played. It was played in the evening, mostly. And then one Saturday, I think it was Capital Radio in London, played it in the afternoon or in the morning or something. It was an entirely inappropriate time to play it, when like kids are listening to the radio. Because, little children listen to the radio. It's kind of scary for them.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was played at a completely inappropriate time, then everyone, then kind of all hell broke loose. And at the same time, there was a case. There had been a rape case where an officer and I can't remember if he was been in the Guards, but it was one of the fancy pants regiments where they, mostly come from public school, and public school to us is private school to you. So when we talk about public school, what we mean is the big institutions where people pay thousands and thousands of pounds to have their children turn out like Boris Johnson, which almost seems like they've been robbed, but there we are. But that's essentially what it is. And a lot of those people go into the military, and particularly those regiments like the Guards, where they have fancy uniforms and they do a lot of sort of ceremonial work. And it's not to say they don't go off to war as well, because they do. But, you know, these guys then become officers. They go straight to Sandhurst, which is the officers' college, and they become officers. And basically they aren't the people who are in the trenches. But this guy, entitlement, I mean, you know, all those things that we can talk about now, like, you know, he was an entitled white middle-class man who thought that he could get away with rape, and the judge, being a white entitled middle-class man, thought it was perfectly reasonable he should be able to get away with rape, and so he didn't sentence him or something, or he was found guilty but wasn't sentenced. In fact, to be honest, I can't remember exactly, but there was a massive hoo-ha about it in the press. And then I was accused of releasing a single to try and garner the coverage. You know, oh, you only release this because of this story. And it's like, do you know how long it takes to schedule and release a single? There's no way we could have known this was going to happen on this day. And so, and then together with somebody playing it at a completely inappropriate time, it was then removed from all the shops, so it couldn't go any further than, say, 34, 32, I can't remember. It couldn't get any higher in the charts because it was removed from the shops.
I see.
So people couldn't actually buy it. So all the main high street stores like Woolworths, WH Smith, Boots, who also all those shops that used to sell singles, then refused to stock it. So you couldn't buy it, so therefore it couldn't get any further up the charts. But yeah, I mean, had it gone on for another week, I suppose if I were a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not, I would say that, you know, had it been in the shops for one more week, it would have got into top 30, in which case it would have had to be considered for Top of the Pops, because that's how it worked at the time. But yeah, they were saved the horror of having to possibly have Pan's people dance to it or whatever.
I saw your performance of it on the Oxford Roadshow.
Yeah.
That was a very intense performance.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was weird because obviously I had to do it to a backing track, so I had to partly follow a teleprompt. So you know, it had to all work properly, and because it wasn't scripted, it was kind of hard. So I was following a teleprompt to make sure it all worked in time with the music. So I do remember that weird experience. But
was there a follow-up song called "Feminist Chauvinist Pig" discussed?
It was a song that I did write a song called "Female Chauvinist Pig," but okay. I don't know that I necessarily agree with what I said anymore.
Okay.
But I mean, it's still a point that there was a point that needed making, but I think that's kind of not very clever or particularly well thought out response. But I think on reflection, what I was trying to say is that it's not, and it's a point that gets made now, is that I don't know. I suppose what I'm doing is putting sort of what I thought 40 years ago, trying to make sense of it. And I think what I was feeling was that there was a certain path cut out for women, and it should include motherhood and being a wife and all of those things. And that it isn't, there needed to be a redefinition. And you know, people still struggle with the notion of women not having children and making that and having that as a choice, as a life choice. You know, people still really, what do you mean you don't want children? It's like, well, not everybody does, you know, and that sometimes is a really good thing. But that wasn't even something, there wasn't even a word for that, really. Not a word for describing that as a life choice back then.
Yeah, it's become more normalized, but it's still like debated as like whether it's okay. Where there's no debate about whether a man chooses to have kids or not.
Yeah, exactly. It's a completely different. And I think that thinking about it now is that was what I was trying to articulate, but didn't quite grasp it, and didn't. It's something maybe, you know, revisit the idea and think about it again. But it's so I didn't quite make sense of it. So it's probably best. I think we did actually write it. I don't know if we recorded it, but we certainly routined it. But yeah, that's what that would have been about.
Did you leave music for a good number of years after that experience?
Yeah, I left. Yeah, I mean, but people would always kind of drag me in to do something. So I did like little bits and bobs over the years, because somebody would say, "Oh, just come and do this, come and do that," you know. So I did do the odd few bits and bobs. But yeah, I worked in fashion, darling. It's perfectly reasonable.
You were a hand model for a while, right?
Well, that's not really a full-time job. So yeah, I mean, you know, you can be a hand model at any point. It doesn't take very long. So it wasn't my job, but yeah, I did hand modeling.
The Ska Divas band or tour, I'm not sure, in 2002, was that sort of the thing that got you pulled back in a more regular basis?
It regularized my interaction with the musical world. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because I would, but that didn't. I mean, that really only lasted for a few gigs, and then it kind of reverted back to the Selector, that's what it was essentially. It was the Selector kind of. Excuse me, the Selector kind of. It's sort of broadening out the idea of the Selector, but broadening out. So 3 vocalists, but yeah, I mean, it just kind of went back to the Selector, and I just guested with them a few times. But it was the Selector of then, not the Selector of now. Different people.
You did some solo albums in 2015. You did Rhoda Sings Bodysnatchers.
2014 it was.
2014, okay. I assume you were asked a lot about Bodysnatchers and Bodysnatchers doing a record. Yeah.
Every week. At least every week. No, every month somebody would say, "Oh, why don't you get the band back together and do that?" And like, firstly, I didn't get the band together in the first place. Secondly, no. So yeah, and I mean, somebody even messaged me like yesterday about putting an album out. Oh yeah, of all the unreleased stuff, and you're like, what unreleased stuff? What are you talking about? There isn't any unreleased Bodysnatchers stuff waiting for some white knight to come and save it and put it out on vinyl. I mean, you know, it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
But people are like desperately believe that it's actually there, and if we just wish hard enough, you know, like we'll just go straight on till morning or whatever it is. I don't know.
I really like the vibe of the record. Linval and Horace are both in the backing band.
Yeah, well, Horace played bass on all the tracks, and Linval came and played on a couple of ones when he was over.
This record you recorded one day, right?
Well, the backing tracks were recorded in one day, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the vocals, you know, some vocals I think were from the day, but some were kind of either backing vocals were certainly recorded on a separate occasion. But yeah, it was mostly recorded on one day in one studio all together. Nightmare situation, nightmare idea. Never do
that. Big contrast to in the studio, though.
Yeah. Amusing aside, yeah. No, I mean it was okay. It would have worked had we had better shielding for the drums, and had we not had the saxophone in there and all that kind of thing, but lesson learned, as it were, because I did it again for the Low Tech 4 EPs. We recorded all together, but that was recorded but that's without, so there was no saxophone was recorded separately, so that it didn't spill, and it may even have been recorded at the same time, but just in a different room. And the drums were like, it was properly. It was done at Paul Weller Studio, so like it's all properly shielded off. It wasn't all sort of make, do, and mend. It was much more. It was kind of set up for that, so it was. The results are much better.
Obviously, this came about because you were asked constantly about it, but you weren't necessarily sure there was an audience, so you wanted to do like a fundraiser, like a crowd fundraiser.
Well, I did a crowd fund because I didn't have the money to make it. It wouldn't have got made if it hadn't been for crowdfunding. I didn't have any money to record an album, so that's why.
Yeah, I gotcha. I saw like an interview. You said that you also wanted to know that the everyone claiming they wanted it were actually on board and not just saying they wanted it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, if the crowdfunder hadn't have worked, that would have given me that answer, wouldn't it? And then I wouldn't have done it. But yeah, I mean, that is the thing about a crowdfunder. It's like if people will actually put their money where, where their hopes are, as it were, then you get the money you've at least got an audience. You've got a ready-made audience.
I really like so the songs, the catalog comes from the things that you released officially and the Peel sessions and whatnot. The two songs that stick out to me the most from the Rhoda Sings Bodysnatchers were both from Peel sessions. Ghost of the Vox Continental and Hiawatha. Those were two I think that I really enjoyed. Maybe it's because I was less familiar with them. I don't know. But
possibly,
yeah. But it's nice to hear. Just nice to hear all the songs together in a kind of a nice recorded same band situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Oh dear.
Don't go anywhere. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, head over to our Patreon. Thank you for listening to In Defense of Ska. Please rate and review this podcast and tell a friend. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at In Defense of Ska. Pick up Aaron's book, In Defense of Ska, at your local bookstore or online. This podcast is edited by Chris Reeves of Ska Punk International. This is your co-host, Adam Davis of Omnigong, leaving you by saying ska now more than ever. All done.
Yep.
All right. So we just got done interviewing Rhoda, and then we went behind the curtain.
Yes.
Or did we? Why are you so quiet?
What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what you're doing.
I'm just waiting for you to lead this conversation.
Oh, I have to lead? You're the host. I'm just the co-host.
Yeah, but the outro, it's always like Adam throws a zinger, and then we can bounce off of it.
Hey, man, I've got my drink. Okay. I'm relaxing after that conversation.
Yes.
And all I really want to do is just let people know that for $5, maybe a little bit more, you can head over to the Patreon. We've got some cool swag over there now.
Swag.
We've got In Defense of Ska cards. So you can be a card carrying member. Yeah. You can be a ska defender.
Yes.
You can get a enamel pin of our cool logo. Yeah. You're just going to repeat everything I say? Okay. And then we also have totes somewhere for you to put your records.
Yes. Yeah. Or your groceries.
They're more record size.
I would kind of prefer people go and do all their grocery shopping with their In Defense of Ska totes
Hey, what better way to let people know about the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. I'm after that grocery store crowd audience is what I'm looking for.
Grocery store crowd.
Yeah. People that buy food, that select group of people.
Yeah, I don't know. I order my groceries. Hey, so who
true.
do we have on next week?
Ooh, next week we got quite the episode. A man by the name of Eugene Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
Would you say one of the most intense episodes we've ever recorded?
Probably the most intense episode we've ever recorded.